Hey everyone, welcome back to Programming Fields. I'm Umesh Rana. The last video was about the database seeding in Laravel, in which we had explored what seeder is and how you can create it to seed the test data for the development and testing purpose. In today's tutorial, we are diving deep into Laravel factories. This is an essential tool for generating realistic test data. So we will cover everything from creating a basic factory to advanced technique like stateful factories and callbacks. But before we begin, if you are not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and let's jump into the world of Laravel factories. So I have navigated to the VS Code editor and I already have one Laravel project that I already created in the last video. So at the very first step, we will be creating our first factory. So let's switch back to the terminal and here let's type PHP artisan make :factory. And here we will have to provide the factory name. So let's give our factory name as employee factory, as I'm going to create factory for employee. So let's hit enter and yes, factory is created. Alright, now let's switch back to database and here inside database we have the factories folder. So inside this factories folder we can see we have employee factory. By default we will have only user factory. This is inbuilt. When you will install Laravel it will come by default. Alright, so let's check out this employee factory first. Inside this employee factory we have one function as definition. So inside this definition we will have to define attribute for which we will be inserting dummy records. So for this employee we already created migration and inside this migration we have defined this schema. So we have name, designation, salary and joining date. Alright, so based on these employee attributes we will define these fields inside this employee factory definition. Okay, so basically this factory will help to seed the database with the fake data. Alright, so previously we used seeders to seed the database. So if we will check out to the seeders folder, inside this we have this employee seeder and inside this we have defined these fields to seed the database. We have the fixed set of data in which we have created a static data to insert into the employee table. Alright, but in case of factory what we will do, we will use fake helper function in order to generate dummy data for the testing purpose. So this fake helper function comes up with faker library and that is a third-party library. So if we will check out to the composer.json file, inside this you can see we have this faker php/faker. Alright, so if we will check out to this documentation first, so let's search for Laravel faker php. Okay, and inside this we can see we have this faker php faker library. So simply click on this and here we can see we have the installation things by using this composer, but in Laravel it is inbuilt, so we don't require to install it again. Now we have to check out the usage of this one. Inside this available formatters, it provides different formatters just like title, male, female, first name, last name, gender, city, street, address and many more. Now if you will switch back to code editor, inside this we have the user factory inbuilt. Alright, so if we will check out this and inside this definition you can see it used this fake helper function and inside this we have this name, email. Alright, in Laravel we can use these all attributes using this fake helper function. Just like we can see we have this suffix name, first name, male. So based on the gender we can define the name as well. So now let's come to the code editor again and inside this employee factory, based on the database schema we have for this employee, we have the name, designation, salary and joining date. As of now we will generate fake data for these all attributes. However, we can add more columns and based on that we can generate fake data. Okay, so let's come to this employee factory and inside this array we will have to define associative array based on our table schema. So at the very first we have the name field and inside this we will use this fake function and name function. Alright, let's duplicate these columns and we will have this designation. So let's write designation and we have this salary and joining date. Alright, now based on these columns we will use different properties in order to generate relevant data. Alright, so we can check out to the documentation again and inside this available formatters if you will scroll down, then we have this company attribute. So related to company, just like job things, we can use these properties. So we have this company name, company suffix and job title. So this job title is basically designation. So we can use this job title function. So let's add this designation as job title. Alright. Now regarding this salary, we can use any integer number. So let's again check out this documentation, and inside this formatters, we have the different categories. So we have this numbers and strings. Let's click on this, and inside this randoms, we have this random digit between 0 to 9. Alright. So we can use these all functions based on our requirement. So as of now, we have to generate salary. So what we will do, we will use this random number. So this random number function will generate random integers between 0 and the given amount of digits. So here it written, when the strict parameter is true, means if the second parameter true or false is given, then based on that it will generate that strict amount of digits. So we will use this random number function. So let's define random number, and inside this I will pass 6 digits and I will restrict it to true. So by default it will generate only 6 digits number. Okay, now let's come to this joining date. So for this we have this date and time. Okay, so regarding this date and time format, I will use this date function. So by default it will be generated in YMD format, and in order to save into the database we require it in the same format, YMD. So let's add date. Okay, so similar to these columns, we can add more columns as per our database schema, and based on those columns we can add more attributes. Alright, so we have defined this fake attribute in order to seed employee data. Now we have to execute this employee factory in order to insert the dummy records inside the employee table. Okay, so we can execute this factory in two ways. Firstly, we can call this factory function directly inside any controller function or even in the seeder. Okay, and secondly, we will be using Tinker command line interface. Okay, so let's see these two ways one by one. I will navigate to this employee seeder, and we already added this truncate function in order to truncate this employee table, and also we were inserting this value. So let's comment this insert function as of now, and here we have this employee model. So what I will do, I will call this employee model : factory function. Okay, and inside this factory function I will have to pass number of records that I want to generate using that employee factory. So let's suppose I want to create 20 records. So I will have to pass this 20, and thereafter I will have to use this create function. Okay, so what it will do, so it will perform insert operation for this employee based on this employee factory, and inside this employee factory we already defined the definition based on these columns. Okay, so by default it will generate 20, and we already imported this model at this top. Now let's switch back to terminal and let's execute this seeder, and here we will write php artisan db seed, and as of now we have only one seeder. So either we can execute php artisan db seed directly, or we can specify the class of the seeder that we want to execute. So if we will run php artisan db seed without specifying the class of that particular seeder, it will execute all the seeders available inside this seeders folder. In case you have multiple seeders, then in that case it is not recommended to use db seed directly, because it will execute all the seeders, and that might affect your database because it will override or it will create duplicate entries. So what I will do, I will specify the class as -class equals employee seeder. Okay, now let's hit enter, and it executed this employee seeder. Now let's check out to the database, and let's open this employees table. So we can see it inserted 20 records, and if you will verify these data are the fake data. So we can manipulate these data according to our need. So let's suppose if I want to generate 100 or 200 records, then we will have to specify that count inside this faker function. So let's suppose I will generate 200. Alright, now let's rerun this db seed command, and yes, it executed this. Now let's verify this table again. Let's refresh it. Yes, within a second it inserted 200 records, and you will verify these all data are fake data but unique. Okay, so this will be very helpful in order to test your functionality while in the development phase. Now let's check out the second way to execute this factory. As of now we used this seeder. Okay, so what I will do, I will comment it first, and I will check out to the terminal, and inside this I will type php artisan Tinker. Basically this Tinker is a command line interface. It will help you to interact with the command. Okay, If you want to perform any command line thing in Laravel, then you can use this Tinker. So let's hit enter. So it opened this cell interface, and inside this we can write the same thing, right? So let's copy, and we will have to define model as app slash models slash employee colon factory function, and as of now I'm going to add in and then create function. Okay, now let's hit enter, and yes, you can see it inserted 10 records inside database. If you will check out to the database again, let's refresh it. Yes, it added 10 records. So previously we had 200 that we already inserted using the seeder. Now it inserted 10 more records, so now we have total 210. Okay, inside this seeder we use this truncate function, so that's why it was truncating the employee table first and then it was inserting the fake data. But in the case of Tinker, it is directly inserting the test data, right? So it is not truncating the table. By using this fake helper function, we can generate our test data for the testing purpose. So now in the next step, we will talk about Laravel factory state. So basically Laravel factory state allows you to define variations or states for generating model instance with different attribute or properties. So for more information, if you will check out to the Laravel official documentation and search for Laravel factory, and just open this Eloquent factories link, and inside this index we have this factory state. So let's click on this, and here we can maintain a state of any model instance. All right, so if we will read out this documentation, it said state manipulation methods allow you to define discrete modifications that can be applied to your model factories in any combination. So for example, for this user factory, we can maintain one status as suspended, and this will maintain this state. So in our case, we have created this employee factory. So for this employee model, we can maintain one state. So as of now in the employee migration, we have these columns as name, designation, salary and joining date. So in order to maintain one state, we will need one more column. So either we can create a new migration to add a new column inside this employee table. So we can add a new column in two ways. So firstly, we will have to create a new migration related to this employee table, and from there we can add a new column. Else we can add that column inside this same migration, and we will have to roll back the current migration, and then we will have to run this migration. All right. So as of now, I'm going to add that column in the same migration. So here I will add table boolean, and inside this I will pass as active flag. Okay, and by default I will make it false. Okay, so it will store 0. Now let's switch back to terminal, and here firstly I will roll back the migration. So I will write php artisan migrate colon rollback, and I will type -- step equals 1. So it will truncate the employee table and this migration will be rolled back. All right. So in the database table, employee table, we have total 210 records. So this data will be truncated. So let's roll back this migration. So this migration is rolled back. Now if you will refresh this table, then we don't have the employee table as of now in this database. Now switch back to terminal again, and let's rerun the migration. So we will write php artisan migrate. Yes, so this migration is executed and we have this employee table. Now let's work on the factory states. In order to manage the factory state, let's switch back to documentation again, and here we will have to define this state. Okay, let's copy this function and let's come back to the editor, and inside this employee factory, after this definition, we will have to add this. Okay, now we will change this function to active because we have added one column as active to maintain the employee state. So let's change this to active, and here we will have to pass that column name as active, and we will pass true or false. So let's suppose I will pass false, and inside this definition we will add this same active to true, because in the migration we have added this active flag to false by default. So from the factory, by default, when employee records will be inserted, by default it will be added as true, but after executing this it will maintain a status from here. So let's come back to the terminal, and from here we will use php artisan tinker again. Okay, and inside this again I will create 20 records. So let's hit enter. Yes, 20 records are created. Let's check out to the database, refresh it. Yes, so here 20 records are inserted, and through the factory it maintained this status as active 1. Okay, So when we executed this factory, by default it added employee active status to true. Alright. So now if we want to maintain this state through factory, then let's switch back to terminal again. And here we will execute this PHP artisan tinker, and then we will rerun this employee factory, but we will have to call that active function just like this. So we will call this active function and then create. Now let's hit enter. Yes, it executed successfully. Now let's refresh this table. So we can see now it inserted 20 more records and the active status of those employees are false. So basically this overrides the state of this table. So here we added this state for this active, and currently it overridden this active status for the newly created employee. So this is all about factory states. Now we will talk about callbacks. So Laravel factory provides callback as well. So basically in Laravel, a factory callback is just a function that allows you to perform additional actions after a model instance is created. So basically in Laravel, a factory callback is a function that allows you to perform additional actions after a model instance is created by the factory. So let's suppose here we have the employee factory, and after executing this factory, if we want to perform any additional action, then we can define a callback. So this is a way to customize the behavior of the factory beyond just setting attributes. So for more information, let's visit the documentation again, and here we can see we have this factory callbacks. So it provides methods just like after making and after creating. So by using these methods, we can perform additional actions after executing this factory. So let's switch back to VS Code, and let's consider we have two tables, just like we have one employee table, and there is one more referenced table belonging to this employee. So when we are performing insert operation in the main employee table, after this execution, that will perform additional insert operation for that referenced table as well. So to understand this better, let's create one more migration for the employee. So we will write PHP artisan make model, let's suppose employee profile, and here we will add migration. So let's hit enter. It generated employee profile model and its migration. So inside this migration, we will define one more column just like text, and here I will define one column as bio. Let's suppose I want to add employee bio, and by default this will be nullable. Now let's define this fillable property inside this model as well. So we have this employee profile model, and here we will write protected fillable equals this bio array. This is done. I will create one more column as table unsigned big integer, and here I will pass employee underscore ID, and we can add unique as well. So we'll write unique, and thereafter I will create one reference as a table foreign, and we will pass this employee underscore ID, and this will create references with ID on employee table. Okay, and we will define on delete cascade. So if any record will be deleted from employees table, that will be automatically deleted from this reference table as well. This is done. Now let's switch back to terminal, and then I will migrate it again. Yes, so the table is migrated. Now let's check this definition. Yes, so we have this employee ID and this bio. This is done. Now let's define callback functionality inside this employee factory. So let's switch back to this employee factory, and in order to define the callback, we will use this after making and after creating function. So simply let's copy this configure function and let's add it here just after this active, and here I will use this after creating function. So let's remove this, and let's replace this user model with employee because we have this employee model. So let's write employee, and its instance will be employee, and inside this function we have to perform the insert action. But before performing insert operation inside this employee profile, what we will do, we will define one relation inside this employee model. So let's switch back to employee model, and here we will define one relation as profile, and this will return $this as 1, and we will call the employee profile model. So we will write employee profile colon class. This is done. Now let's copy this profile function and let's switch back to this employee factory. So here we will call this employee instance and then its relation profile function, and then we will perform this create, and inside this create function we will have to pass that bio. Okay, so for this bio we can call this spec. Generating this dummy bio, I will call this faker paragraphs function, and here I will pass two parameter, and the second parameter will be true. It will create 2 lines. This is done. So whenever we will execute this employee factory, after executing this definition, it will call this configure, and after creating this employee, it will insert inside this profile table as well. So let's execute this again. Let's rerun this thinker command and call this employee factory only. Okay, let's create 20 more records. So let's hit enter. Yes, it executed. Now let's switch back to database. Now let's refresh this. So we have the 20 records employee profile. Let's check in the employee table. Yes, inside this employee table, it inserted 20 more, and belonging to those employee, it created entries in the employee profiles table as well. So we can see we have the employee ID 41 to 60. This is all about factory callback. We saw factory states and callback as well. By using this way, we can manage factory states and callback as well. Finally, we have completed a comprehensive guide to Laravel factories. We covered everything from basic setups to advanced techniques like relationships, seeding, and stateful factories. Recap what we have learned, try these examples in your own projects, and don't forget to check out the documentation for even more features. Laravel factories are a powerful tool, and mastering them will significantly enhance your development workflow. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for future tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.